Hi, everyone. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Atish. I'm a DJ producer, label head based out in New York City. And I run a Patreon program and an artist mentorship program. And as part of my artist mentorship program, I have a guest every other month from the industry. And I'm offering these for free right now. And maybe one day I'll paywall these, but for right now they're free. And for this month, I am very happy to have Megan Palmer. She's an account director at Circulate. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for
And
having me.
a little background on Megan. She does brand management, social media, and digital strategy. She works with record labels, festivals, and artists throughout the dance music industry. Many brands and names you've heard of: Seth Troxler, Circle Loco, Kappa Future Festival, Adam Bear, Middle Beast Festival, Ushuaia, and Hayabiza. Definitely big timer names in the industry. But you also work with artists at a at a middle tier and a more of an entry level tier as well. So you kind of, is it correct? You have a kind of good grasp of
Definitely.
the lay of the
The
land.
full spectrum, everything from artists who are releasing their first single all the way up to kind of to full scale festivals. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, and I'm sure everyone here in the audience is. Oh, let me mute some people here. And we're all excited to hear what you have to say. So let's just, and you're based out of Dublin, Ireland, correct?
Yes, Dublin. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's just jump into the first kind of 10,000 foot high question, which is what is a brand and why is it important for artists to think about their brand?
Okay, great. I almost feel like this is sometimes a philosophical kind of question. What is a brand? You go on for like, what is the meaning of life? Um, if I'm honest, I think the one of the simpler answers is probably the best route to go down here when you say what is a brand. Have you ever heard the phrase like, oh, that's very on brand for you? If you do something, I don't know, you get up to something at the weekend, someone says, oh, it's very on brand for you. A brand is a, an extension of your personality, I suppose, and how much you choose to curate it to show to the public. So in the same way, what you might put on social media is like your highlights reel. And that is your brand. It's the facets of yourself that you choose to show the rest of the world.
Hmm. So, and sometimes there's this perception within dance music, and I won't get into the definition of the word underground, but where sometimes people look down on the idea of like, oh, I don't want to think about my brand or this, this thing, or I don't want to put on this false facade. But actually, what you're saying is quite the opposite, which is your brand. I mean, it's still your authentic you, and you're just deciding which pieces of the real you to showcase to kind of paint that picture, right?
Yeah, 100%. I'm a strong believer that obviously the more you amplify certain aspects of your personality or what you're passionate about, in the same way people do with their music, that's the kind of key to success. Like people see through inauthenticity. Now they know when you're faking it and when you're not. So yeah, it's not about creating this wild facade that's not relatable to you.
Sure, excellent. And oh, just as a quick note, if anyone has any questions, feel free to toss them out in the chat, and we'll take them as we go. And the last 10 minutes we'll reserve for questions as well. Back to brand. Okay, so we're revealing this authentic, these bits and pieces of ourselves to form this picture of our authentic self. And let's say I'm a producer. I have some tracks I'm going to release. I have some gigs that I have coming up. How do I how do I begin in deciding what direction to craft my brand, or what's the thing that's going to do the most for me, or that's going to resonate with an audience? Like, from step zero, where do I begin?
I think the answer to that is that obviously you have to test a few different things. You're not going to crack it straight away. In the same way that you're not the same person that you were 10 years ago, your brand is going to evolve and change over time. I think when you look at it from a promotional point of view as an artist, it's all about kind of building layers. So obviously your base layer and the core of it all is the music that you're putting out there. And then you layer on top of that. So your events, studio work, behind the scenes, that kind of thing. And then you can start to layer even further on top of that and go, am I passionate about art? Things like that. Kind of art and fashion lend themselves really well in the music industry. So it's all about kind of layering on top of that kind of base level and then testing out and seeing actually what fits together and what works and what do people respond to.
And when you say testing that out, can you drill down a little bit more on what that means? Does that mean kind of like writing down a document and sharing that with like close friends and colleagues, or does it mean making a few posts on social media and seeing what gets the most likes, or does that mean talking to a brand? Like, what does that, what does that mean to test it out?
I suppose if you wanted like brand 101 and you were sat there pen and paper, that would be the first place to start. I suppose, like, what are you passionate about? What areas of your life are you comfortable showing to the public, as well as you're on top of your music, kind of thing. And then the next stage would be putting it out on the public domain, so whether that's on Instagram, TikTok, social platforms, and seeing how people respond. For both.
Yeah, sorry. So the brand is these aspects of our personality, and obviously the music that we release and the gigs that we choose to play and all this, and then there's also the, let's say, more tangible aspects of the brand, such as, let's say, the logo or the color palette or this kind of thing. How does how important is it to have a full, let's say, visual aesthetic and package in relation to the brand? Do you think that's important? And if you do, what's the first step in kind of working that out?
It is 100% important if you're looking as a brand as a full package. If you're going back to day one and where you're starting out, I think it's a progression piece. You don't need to say, I'm starting out my music career tomorrow. I don't need to have a logo, a full suite of assets at my disposal. You can build on those. Obviously, when you're getting to a stage in your career where you are kind of presenting a full media package, as it were, then yes, obviously it's so important. And as a marketer, I'd be wrong for saying it's not. But yeah, from day one, it's more about, I think, finding kind of elements that fit in with your style. That doesn't even necessarily need to be a logo. It can just be, even if it was a selfie or a picture of yourself, is it kind of true to you and who you are? And then you kind of project that out, and the rest comes along with it.
Got it. So this is one question from the audience. She couldn't tune in today, but it's a very specific question. She's trying to build her artist career, and she has many different interests. I guess I won't go into what they are, but many different interests in very, very different industries and specificities. I need to figure out how to mute everyone. Let's just say that you're trying to build an artist career, and you have a varied kind of interest, kind of environment. Do you think it's better to break things out into different brands, or to try and unify them all in one?
I suppose I want to ask, what are all these different interests? How broad does the spectrum go? Oh, I have a bit of an echo there.
Yeah, sorry, okay. I just muted him. Let's say one is sports related, one is self-help related, and one is DJ producer related. So pretty different.
Okay, all varying. In an ideal world, I think you would like to combine them all and show off all these different facets, but you have to do that without cannibalizing one or the other. So if you can make those kind of clear distinguishments, as it were, then I would say go for it. If you feel like yourself, you can't put across all these different elements, then probably someone's not going to be able to understand that if you're struggling to put that across. So how easy is it for you to describe all your different hobbies and interests in a couple of sentences? And if you're struggling, that's probably an indicator. Like I said before, there's a lot of different interests that do lend themselves and can really help. If it's something completely contrasting, then maybe that's that kind of element that you curate and you go, okay, this is separate.
Got it. Okay. So let's jump a little bit into nuts and bolts of promoting our releases or promoting ourselves, namely PR. How does PR fit within dance music, and what does PR actually do?
What does PR actually do? That's a great question.
I didn't mean for that to sound condescending, but
No. Well, at the end of the day, PR is, let's put it in day-to-day terms. So word of mouth. If I was to tell you about a new track that I've just heard on Spotify, or a new artist, because I've told you and I've given you that recommendation, the chances are that you're going to then go and look it up. Hopefully, if you trust me, you'll take my recommendation on board. So PR is just like an amplification of that, in the sense that it's putting a new track or a new artist or a news story out into the public domain through like a trusted source, a reputable source. So you're leveraging new audiences in that way. And I think especially for new artists, the more PR you can get in that respect, especially when it comes down to releases specifically, the better it is, because you're leveraging all these kind of already built, engaged audiences.
Okay, so that's good to know, and it answers my next question, which I actually think was a misconception that I had, which was I always thought PR was something that like middle tier or top tier artists, kind of do, where they have enough going on or this kind of thing. But PR is relevant even at the entry level, just to have a foot in the door to kind of get some kind of attention from the get go.
Yes, definitely. I think if you can get the PR, then you should always go for the PR. But that could be something like if you have a release coming out and you premiere it on another channel, then that's PR, because you're leveraging that audience
And
with the track.
for sure. And how do you, this is another thing, I guess in the world of social media, it's a little bit easier, but how do you measure, how effective a PR campaign is? Do you look at the number of likes that it got, if there was an article that was posted, or, the number of jumps and plays that it got, let's say on Spotify or on the premiere? Or it's kind of one of these, I come from an engineering world where I always want to like measure everything very clearly. How do you measure if a PR campaign, let's just say directly, if a PR campaign was successful, or how would you set expectations for an artist to say, hey, this is what we think you're going to get out of this?
On a broader scale, you can look at kind of how many people you are reaching through that campaign. So if you have an article published on a site that has X amount of website views per month, that's your kind of broad spectrum. This is how many people you're reaching. If you want to get really technical with things like releases, you can add in custom tracking links and things like that. So say I put a release out this Friday. I put a specific link in the press release that then goes out, and then I can go back and track the click-throughs I've had on that.
So, on that note, for the label I run, Manjumasi, we started off doing PR early in the label, and we would do premieres for all releases, and we would pay money for that, and we're like, okay, this is cool, this feels like the right thing to do. And then eventually we transitioned to a point where it said, and this is nothing against the smaller tier, press outlets, but we said, even though we're like seeing some listens, on these smaller tier blogs, we think that the only people that are actually clicking through these, if they see it on their newsfeed, are people who have already heard of our label, or people who already know Atish or already know the artist, because it kind of feels like in social media there's so much noise of so much music coming out all the time, that my feeling is that people really aren't clicking on some artists they haven't heard from one of the lower tier press outlets, compared to, okay, if we could get something on RA, if we can get something on Mixmag, if we can get something on DJ Mag, like, yeah, we definitely want to do that. But the PR companies can never actually, no one can actually guarantee that you're going to get placed on one of the big ones. So I guess my specific question is, how much value do you think, let's say, the social media audience plays, or how much click through do you really think happens on the, I don't want to say lower tier, but the less distributed, high volume, high noise kind of channels, like, is compared to the big ones? And without that certainty, how do you really know that it's going to be like a dollar well spent?
That's a great question. In terms of click-throughs and things, I mean, that's going to vary wildly depending on what the publication is. The same way that like smart links for releases, the click-through rate can be, when you click through to a release, you play on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, etc. A click-through rate on that landing page in itself can vary from like 10% to 70%. Depending on the artist, depending on the track, depending on what platforms are available. So the same rules apply if you're looking at blog articles and things like that as well. A lot of it depends on their existing audience, but then is it targeting the right people? And I totally appreciate when it's smaller publications that maybe you might have the attitude of, well, we'll take what we can get in that respect. But in that scenario, I would say pick your battles. So if you have 3 releases, maybe put the press behind one and put a little bit more into it, so you can maybe scale up either the volume of publications or be more specific with the publications that you're going after to do that.
Got it. Okay. So jumping to a question from the audience, which actually aligns with one of my questions, which is how important is the number of followers that you have on a profile? It seems pretty important, but yeah, what's your opinion on just that one number itself?
So I actually had this conversation with someone today.
Okay.
So it's a great time to answer it. So to give you some context, the conversation I was having was I was chatting with someone about finding a vocalist for a track. And the first thing that was said to me was they need to be about X amount of followers. And that was the first thing. And I thought that's so interesting that that's kind of the benchmark that we're working on. And the reason I think it is a benchmark is because it's showing, I suppose, a trajectory on where you're going. So it doesn't necessarily mean if you don't have 100,000 followers on Instagram, you're never going to get noticed. That's not true, because there's different niches and there's different genres within that. So it's all relative to what space you're in and who you're targeting and who you're going after. What I would look for personally is not necessarily a number. I would look at that growth trajectory, like I was saying. So if you had 500 Instagram followers and then you've just shot up to 10,000 in a short space of time, and I'm looking at your engagement levels, your video reach, that kind of thing, and I can see it improving over a course of time, then like I'm onto a winner here, because this person's already getting that. And then it's maybe just a case of having that next step with a social media agency, where they can put a kind of bit more power behind it to springboard you even onto the next level past that. So I don't think it's necessarily about a set figure, like you have to be at X followers in order to achieve anything. I think it's about showing that continuous kind of growth and actually that you're working towards something.
Got it. And just abstracting up from that, but fundamentally, the number of followers you have, in your opinion, is very, very, or sorry, the whether it's the number itself, but more importantly, the derivative of the growth, that is something that's very, very important to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a massive bonus. I'm not saying it's I've worked with artists that have had 150 Instagram followers specifically. It's not necessarily going to be a barricade to stop you doing things, but it's certainly going to put you to the front of the queue. It's going to help you. It's just another kind of tool at your disposal.
Are you aware of, and I'm just thinking this question off the cuff, but are there many artists who, let's say they're making a full-time career, let's say they're doing reasonably well financially, sustaining themselves, playing good gigs, good festivals, who have a very, very poor social media following? Or do you think making it as an artist is directly linked? Is there any way you can make it as an artist without, fully engaging in social media?
I mean, I've seen it, certainly. There are certain artists that choose not to engage in social media at all. But I think if you're looking to grow as an artist, in my personal and professional opinion, why would you not use that to help you get to the next level? But no, it's not unheard of.
Yeah. Well, I think the why is, and I mean, I surely feel this myself sometimes, is I think a lot of us artists are frustrated that social media is this thing that we have to do. It consumes so much of our time, and we feel all this personal pressure, psychological damage it does on us, and it just takes all this time away from the things that we really love doing. And I think, a lot of it's just reconciling that this is part of being an artist. Like social media is, if you want to have a career, this is your marketing division essentially. So I think I'm just answering on the artist's behalf. I think that's the reason why we don't want to do it a lot of the time, because it's kind of a drag away from the thing that we really love doing. But that's maybe where social media team comes in play and kind of helps us and crafts us in that way.
Yeah, totally. And I totally get that. It is by nature, it is kind of all consuming. Like if you look at your screen time report on your phone, mine's certainly gone up in the past couple of years alone, and in a couple of years time it'll probably gone up even more. We're always looking to scroll and consume more, and therefore if you want to promote yourself more, then yeah, by nature you're gonna have to spend more time on it. I think in that respect it's definitely about separating out this kind of overly emotional connection to social media in that respect. And that's where we go back to talking about brands. Yes, it is you and it's authentic to you, but it's what you choose to show the world. And I think that's a really important distinguishment that you have to make very early on in order to kind of not suffer from that kind of fatigue, social media fatigue, as it were.
And actually, I've actually never had a social media manager before, but let's just say, I feel that I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, or I don't know how to go about, crafting this or strategizing. Let's say I brought a social media manager aboard. What does a social media manager actually do? Is it the nut? Like, will they? Actually, I actually don't really have any idea what a social. What does what would a social media manager do for me? And how much does it cost? Like, ballpark. I'm not trying to get you to hold your feet to the fire.
The first answer to that is how much money do you have?
Right. Yeah. Fair enough.
No, I'm joking.
What are your fees right now? Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to vary depending on whether you're going light touch or whether you're going into like full campaign mode, all bells and whistles kind of thing. So I suppose let's start with a standard social media package, as it were, which would be someone that would come in, do kind of an audit of the social channels that you have at the moment, if any, and then kind of strategize from there and say, this is working for you, this isn't working, this is where you need to develop, this is what we need to try. So it's about kind of, like I was saying, taking that emotional connection out of it, as it were, and almost compartmentalizing the different elements of it. So for an artist, if I were to be really black and white about it, I would say you kind of have releases, you have events, you have maybe behind the scenes kind of studio work. I saw a really great reel actually just before I logged on here, and it was a deconstructed version of a track as a reel. This kind of like added extra to a release, and so on, and kind of breaking it down and saying, right, this is what you need to post in a week or a month, and I need XYZ content. And then going as far as obviously planning that out, writing your captions, posting it, community management, which is actually responding to DMs and comments. You can go a step further with that, so you can do community outreach. So a great way to grow your profiles on socials is to interact with other people. It's not just about posting on your own page, it's actually having your kind of wish list, I suppose, of who in the industry do you want to interact with, and actually putting a bit of time aside every day and doing that, whether it's just adding a comment or sending a DM and so on.
And this is something that the social media manager encourages the artist to do, or they might do it on the artist's behalf, or both?
It could be both. So it depends. If that would come into, I suppose, whether you go for like a standard social media package, or how many hours you wanted your social media manager to put into it.
Got it. Okay. And the next question is in relation to the followers, which is, okay, follower count matters, the trajectory of follower count matters, but it's clearly some of these or many of these profiles have fake followers. And I get these offers all the time in my inbox, like, $10 you'll guarantee you 1,000 followers, or this kind of thing. And I actually read about how it works, and they actually have some pretty interesting ways that they go about doing it. I've never tried it, but what's your high level opinion on artists or brands who pay for followers, and what do you think is, how prevalent this is? What's your opinion on it, and what are the risks involved in this?
Don't do it.
Great.
No, that's the very short and simple answer. I think obviously I've just said about how a trajectory of growth followers is definitely something that people would look at and would notice, and it's a bonus to you. That doesn't mean go out and buy a load of followers, because In the
Spend
long
off
term,
on your stuff, spending.
it's not gonna help you at all. And what you do is say I go out and buy 20,000 followers in 6 months' time, even if I naturally start to grow off the back of that, and I'm going up in followers, all those bots are gonna start falling away. So then you're fighting a losing battle. You've got yourself up to a certain level, and then you've made it really difficult for yourself. So while it might seem like a harder slog at the start, doing it organically is 100% always the best way.
Got it. Happy to hear that. And good, because now I definitely don't feel pressure to do it, because I never want to do something like
Don't listen to the
that.
DMs.
Yeah. But in your personal experience, how common do you think this is?
I would have said maybe a couple of years ago, it would have been a lot more common.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are a lot more savvy to it now. If they do see a huge jump in followers, you can see like, what's a random example? So Love Island in the UK is massive. And this was actually one of the news articles I was reading the other day about someone who, before they went on TV, they're obviously putting themselves in the spotlight in the same way that an artist would want to get that kind of public viewership. Bought a load of followers before they went on, and it was the first thing that was picked up. So if you are putting yourself in the public eye, you're putting yourself up to that scrutiny as well. So if you're doing something where there's a chance you're going to get found out, I wouldn't do it.
For sure. And sometimes I'll come across an artist profile, I haven't heard of them, and I'll see they'll have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers, and then I'll go to their SoundCloud and they'll have a couple hundred followers, or the engagement is very, very low, so they have the following, and it just completely just turns me off. So
because don't you? That's it exactly. People have seen it enough times to know where it's not genuine.
Sure. But I one of the reasons I asked is I almost wonder if it's become so prevalent and so common that people have just gotten desensitized to it and just said, oh, well, this is just the way it's done. But there's still definitely a negative perception.
Yeah, I need to do it to be in the race.
Mm-hmm.
Almost. I think that's probably, and this links back to what you were saying about maybe the pressures of social media.
Mm-hmm.
And people feel like they have to do that. And like I was saying, it's not about having 100,000 Instagram followers. It's the quality, and it's that progression as well.
Mm-hmm. Makes complete sense. Question from the audience. This is Lila. We get a lot of plays on our sets on SoundCloud, but they don't follow us. Is it a good idea to reach out to some of those listeners with the latest set? How do you, get engaged, followed fans at the next level of the, let's say, marketing funnel, as opposed to just one-off listens?
Okay, that's great. I suppose that's where, from a social media point of view, when you're saying I have a new set on SoundCloud, it's adding those kind of tips and tricks into your caption copy and saying, like, don't forget to follow us. Have you seen YouTube videos where obviously at the end they're always like, don't forget to like and subscribe? It seems really cheesy, but there's a reason people do it. Because if you kind of say it enough times, I think it's you have to see something 7 times, 7 points of contact before it'll stick in someone's head. So if you've done that 7 sets, and every time you've gone, don't forget to follow, don't forget to subscribe, it will stick.
But how does that work on SoundCloud? I mean, do you think it's acceptable to kind of put that at the end of a set or beginning of a mix on SoundCloud? Or on YouTube that makes complete sense, but how would you do that from Sound? Because people, in my experience, people don't read mix descriptions at all. I'll put my track list in the mix description, and I'll have all these track ID requests, in the SoundCloud comments. So, any specifics on that particular platform, how to make that conversion?
That's where I think it comes back to kind of things like your bio and making sure you're fully optimized, because it's not just about having maybe a load of listens on SoundCloud or a load of followers on SoundCloud. It's how that then goes across to all your different profiles. So you want everything to build up simultaneously. So I think in that kind of aspect, it's go look at your profile, make sure that you have everything optimized to as much as you can, so that you have all your links, you have a really good description, and put the frequency of how often you're uploading sets, put that in your bio, because then you're giving people a reason to come back.
And one thing I've found that helps this applies more to DJs than it does for the everyday listener. But if you kind of hide your download link behind an email collector, if someone wants to download the track or if they want to download the set, then you force them to give your email, and now
Mhm.
you can build up an email list, and you have. I don't- do you. I strongly pitch this to my audience and my mentees, which is email is an incredibly powerful. It's an old tech, but incredibly powerful marketing tool. So one, I just want to say that's one thing that I found is a really good way to engage people through listens. And two, would you agree, or what are your thoughts on email as a marketing platform?
Yeah, absolutely. If you break it down into your funnel, so to speak, email is still definitely one of the highest ones in terms of open rates, click-through rates, and ultimately conversions. It is the technology is older than social media. It's kind of simpler is better when it comes to
Yeah,
email marketing. You don't want it kind of all flashing and dancing. A really nice, clean design, simple send out. That's the key with email marketing. But yeah, 100%. It's the best way to grow an engaged database in that respect.
for sure. So once again, I said this on I think two of my previous office hours, and here it is again. Everybody start an email list. Like if you, I think it's an absolute must for building an artist career to have an email list. So here it is again. Um, so let's jump. Oh, and one thing I wanted to jump back to was when you talk about measuring the growth of an artist, it's not just a follower count. What tools do you use? Because obviously you're not checking the artist profile every day and putting it in a spreadsheet. Surely there's, I'm sure, a few go-to social media tools that you use to kind of get the 360 view of how an artist is doing, or how a brand or a social media personality is doing.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a whole range of tools for social media in general. And I don't think it's about just having one that would be a one size fits all kind of thing. I use different tools for different things. So if I want to do a bit of an artist overview, I would probably look on something like Chartmetric and get those key stats straight away. I can get monthly listeners on Spotify, YouTube listens, streams, Instagram stats. I'm getting the kind of full picture. If I was doing a social media audit and a deep dive, and you're looking more into actual content, then you want more kind of social media tools. And there's a whole range of different tools that you can use. Um, if you're looking for things where you don't have to pay, like Facebook Insights, Instagram Insights, is obviously a great place to start because all the data is there. All these paid tools and software that you can use, ultimately, it's all an API connection out of the platform. So the data is already there.
Mhm.
The reason those tools are great is because they take that data out and present it in a way that's easy to read, but you don't necessarily have to pay for those tools if you have the time to kind of deep dive.
Sure. So outside the built-in Facebook and Instagram tools, just for documentation purposes, would you mind just tossing out a few of the names of the tools that you use at work or the
Yeah, definitely. So there's Sprout Social, there's Social Pilot, there's Hootsuite, Buffer is another one later. So there's quite a few.
awesome. Just taking another question from the audience here. This is from Brian Garlic. What's the best question that someone has asked about your services that you thought everyone should ask, but almost nobody does? That would give you.
Um,
I'll just pause the question there.
okay. The best question someone's asked that I think everyone should ask. Okay.
Oh, and the context is to see if a PR rep would be good for you. So, what's the best interview question for a PR rep that people might not be asking enough? That's the
Okay.
crux of his question.
I think the best way to approach a PR rep or a social media manager or whoever it is, and like I said, if it was an interview question, I think the best question you should ask is how much work am I going to need to put into this as well? Because it's not, it's, I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding of, okay, I've hired someone, I'm out, that's it, I'm done. You don't buy a gym membership and then not go to the gym or personal trainer, whatever it is, um and then not show up. It's about working together. So I think that's probably the best thing. Like, what is the expectation on my side here? What do I need to do in order to make this work?
And I think what you just said here is actually not just for a PR company, but as you were talking about what a social media manager does, I can hire a social media manager And unless I'm paying for a very expensive one, they can say, hey, this content's doing the best. You should do more of this, like focus on this. But at the end of the day, I still have to create the content or film the videos or do this kind of thing. And even me, before I was working with a manager, and now that I have a manager, I love having a manager. He takes so much work off my plate. But in many ways, I have so much more work to do because he knows the highly, I still have to
Giving you the work to do.
do, he does a lot of the paperwork and the strategy, but we still have to do the work unless we're spending a lot of money. It's still, so it's good to kind of understand exactly what you're getting and
Yeah,
what
exactly.
you're not just outsourcing something, you're collaborating with someone, right?
That's it. It's about taking someone else's expertise in an area and how you then use that to promote yourself. Because at the end of the day, it's you that you're promoting. It's your music. It's who you are. So why would you want to completely put that in the hands of someone else? They should be guiding you. They should be absolutely helping you get there, but you still need to be involved. And if someone was saying to you, you don't need to lift a finger, you don't need to, I'll go away and work on this for 3 months, then we can catch up at the end, then that's a red flag.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I think that's a great takeaway in the world of marketing this. And also, I've said this before too, when building an artist career, you can build your team and you can have people on your team, but you're still the CEO of your company. Like you can't just go off and disappear in some forest, whatever. You still have to be fully understanding and engaged with everything that's going on. And you're driving the ship and you're managing the managers.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're delegating almost. I think the benefits of having a kind of a roster, I suppose, having a social media manager, PR agent, those kind of things, is that you are the hub, as it were, the core of everything, but maybe some of the smaller details, the paperwork, the scheduling, the strategy, you're outsourcing that, and then it's coming back to you. So you can kind of pick the bits where you need to be present. So I mean, I can't do a TikTok for an artist because I'm not the artist. I can help them film it. I can set it up. I can get the content day. I can write the brief. I can say, this is what I think is going to do well and get you to that level. But at the same time, they still need to show up and be present. But it's taken all that other work out of it just to get you to that stage where you can just show up. And I think that kind of links back to what you were saying before about social media. People feel like it can take so much time because there's the planning, and there's the executing, there's the posting, there's that kind of thing. So you're stripping out those elements.
Absolutely. So let's jump into some more specifics around release marketing. How should I promote a release? Let's just start with that, that high level question. How should I promote a release, and what is a release campaign?
Okay, how should I promote a release? You need to talk about it a lot. Eat, sleep, breathe the release. I was actually chatting to someone about this the other day, and I used Drake's latest album as an example. So, however many millions of followers, huge engaged audience. Okay, there wasn't a big teaser campaign, big pre-release campaign, because you can drop an album and that's fine. People are going to listen to it. But on the day that album dropped, he still posted, or his social media team, should I say, still posted on Instagram 5 times.
Oh, wow.
So it doesn't matter how big you are, who you are, it still has to be done. And it's about that kind of, it goes back to what I was saying, those 7 times. If you want to talk about a full scale release campaign, like a global one where you have digital, you have out of home, like billboards and things, you have press articles. These are all the different pieces that add up to that 7. And then on the 7th one, someone then goes and listens to the track. So like I said, it just goes back to, it's all these layers, and how much can you layer on the actual music itself. So can you talk about it on Instagram? Can you do a studio session? Can you do a paid campaign? Can you do press? It's all different things. And it doesn't mean it's going to fail if you're missing one, but obviously the more you layer, the more successful it's going to be.
Got it. Yeah, and I guess you beat me to my next question, which is for us artists who aren't at the Drake tier, I just had an EP that came out last week, and we were just trying to think like what are the things that we can put on socials? Like, okay, we could put the artwork, and then it's like, okay, a photo of me in the studio, a video of me in the studio, maybe a link to a press article. Are there any other kind of what are some of the other effective low hanging fruit, non billboard level things? If you have any that you could throw out that some of us could use to be one of those 7 mentions or 7.5 mentions to get in people's brains.
Any clips of live
Oh
performances
yes, yes, yes.
always do so well. And normally, the, like I said, the simplest things are the most effective. So if you had a track, if you played that track a
Yeah.
couple of months before, make sure someone records you doing it so you have it ready for the release. And then hopefully you have a bank of like 3, 4, 5 video clips ready to go. And that's a couple of weeks of promotion right there.
Okay. Here's something I struggle with, and this is a very tactical question. I find that it's very, very hard for me to get good clips of me playing live. Even if I ask a friend, just like, hey, in the DJ booth, can you just like record me playing a video? And some of these artists just have amazing iPhone clips. Do you have any high level pointers or guidance? Like, is there like a document I can just give to someone that says, like, hey, take this clip, this kind of thing? Like, why is
Yeah,
it
yeah.
so hard
There's
for me to
a
get
thing.
video clips? And I feel sheepish asking people, like, hey, can you take a video of this trip? But like, help me out here.
Yeah, you know, you have to do it. And there's a couple of really quick things you can do straight away that when I say them, you're gonna think that's so simple, but it's gonna make all the difference. Make sure your camera is turned to the higher quality, the 4K recording. So you go into your settings, you go into your camera. I can send this to you afterwards so you can post it if you want. And make sure it's on the higher quality recording. By default, I'm talking about an iPhone here
Yeah.
specifically, by default, the recording quality is slightly lower, and you can up that. And the other thing that is really obvious, wipe your phone lens.
Hmm.
You know the amount of times people record things and it's looks like it's not good quality, and it's not. It's because if they did literally just got their t-shirt and rubbed the camera lens beforehand, that's going to improve the quality of the videos straight away. If you were to do a before and after, you would see the difference. I suppose the other thing is pick the people that you ask to record. Don't be like, obviously if you have a friend that's really into their social media, you want them there to record that clip. Obviously if you don't have that friend, then just get them to record the full thing and cut it down.
Yeah.
Record that. It might take a little bit longer, but if you record 15 minutes and then get that minute clip out of it, at least you've got it, rather than someone that's just kind of gone, all right, okay, yeah,
Sure.
and then that's all you've got to work with.
Sure. That makes sense. Let's jump into some specifics around platforms, and I'm going to start with TikTok. I feel a lot of pressure to be on TikTok, and I'm advising others to get on TikTok because it's a very, very rapidly growing platform. So let's just start with what's your opinion on TikTok? And I feel like it hasn't really caught fire in the house and techno scene that much yet. But let's just start with what's your opinion on TikTok? Do we need to be on TikTok?
I think it's only a matter of time, really, isn't it? It's the latest way that people are consuming music, and especially the younger generations that you look at, Gen Z in particular, the way they consume music is more and more through social media platforms. So the number one in the UK at the minute, LF System, released their track, I think it was the beginning of May, 5, 6 weeks ago, started to go viral on TikTok, and now it's number one. Would it have reached number one without it going viral on TikTok? Because it's been however many weeks since the release? Probably not. So it's definitely, and when you look at the charts in general, all the high ranking tracks at the minute are TikTok famous, so to speak. So in terms of being an artist on TikTok, I think it is becoming more and more essential, but that doesn't necessarily mean, okay, I need to go and create this whole new persona for TikTok, going back to what we were talking about before. It can be something really simple, in the sense of some artists literally record themselves doing, like, having a cup of coffee and then overlay the track, and that's how they circulate the music and get it out there. It's more about actually getting the audio out there to start with.
That I'm glad you said that, because you answered my next question. And on a personal, I feel like TikTok is this thing I need to do, and I feel so much pressure because what I see on TikTok are these beautifully cut, amazing, hilarious, million view things. And I'm like, there's no way I can do that on TikTok, so I'm just not going to bother. But hearing you say it doesn't have to be that, it can just be you drinking a cup of coffee, or whatever with the soundtrack. That's a good place to start, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's about the same way if you look at your Facebook posts from 2013 or whenever it was, and they're all grainy, and you look at the way we have social media now and the way we present ourselves, it's an evolution. And probably if you don't have a TikTok profile and you're just starting out, the chances are you're going to look back in a year, no matter what, and go, oh, okay.
Right.
I'm doing a bit better now. But it's about starting somewhere, and it doesn't have to be this fake persona that does. If you don't do TikTok dances, you don't need to do TikTok dances. It's not necessarily about that, but I think it's, if you want to be in the race and you want to be on the platform, then there's things you can do straight away to get there and make sure your music specifically is on that.
I think I know the answer to this question. I'm going to ask it because I think it opens something up. But the question from Doris the sender is, do you think TikTok is bad as it encourages short form content with a specific part of the song that messes with the end to end storytelling of the song?
That's a great question. I like that. Okay, I'll go back to the example I was just talking about, the number one track at the moment. So a Gen Z attention span is 8 seconds. A millennial is 12 seconds. So in terms of consuming social media content, it's highly unlikely that you're going to get more than that anyway. So that's why when obviously Reels is a big thing at the moment, but Instagram stories are only 15 seconds because people need to consume that content quickly. The best way to look at it, I suppose, is that is almost the teaser. That track that's number one at the minute still has 33 million streams on Spotify. So just because they're not listening to the whole track on that platform doesn't mean that they're not going to go and listen to the full track. And I think that's probably the best way to look at it. You're not saying only 30 seconds of my track are valid because they're the 30 seconds on TikTok. That's just the gateway to get people to listen to the rest.
It's like a trailer for a movie. It's like, have we hooked you in? Now go watch the full movie kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, this is an interesting question. This is from me here. How do you stay relevant after going viral? What's the merit of going viral versus slowly building a more committed fan base? I like that question a lot.
That's a great question. So I've seen this before where someone has gone viral. And then this is TikTok especially, where video views were maybe in the low thousands, 3,000, should we say. And then there's one video that goes up to like 300, 400,000. But then the videos after that drop back down again. And that can be really disheartening. And I totally understand why it would come across that way. And you think one hit wonder kind of thing. But that's not the case at all. It's consistency and persistence is key, I suppose. Continue doing what you're doing and it will naturally build, and it's not linear in that respect. If you were to put it on a graph, your growth is going to be like this, because you are going to have some videos that I think the TikTok algorithm is something like 4 weeks your videos go in circulation as a whole. So you are going to have ones that naturally just hit people at better times and do better. If it's a track specifically, obviously the momentum on that is going to continue to build. So if you were to expect the exact same results on your next release, then that's a dangerous trap to fall into, because that's not necessarily the way the algorithm is going to work for you. But if you continue to do it, it's going to naturally build in the long run because of that viral TikTok or whatever it was that you had.
Got it. So, one more question related to TikTok. Also on a personal note, I'm interested in getting into TikTok. So let's just say I start up a TikTok profile. How would you advise pulling people onto TikTok? Because if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one there to hear it, do I post stories about it on Instagram? Should I, mention in my mailer? Like, how do I become how do I make people aware that I'm now on a new platform?
You should absolutely use all the other platforms you have to promote it. In TikTok itself, if you post TikTok, then there's a share button to your other platforms. So that's a quick one straight away. Just to put the word out there. The great thing about TikTok though, and the way it works and the way the videos are in circulation for slightly longer, is that you can reach new audiences quicker. If you wanted to, I'm not saying you should, if you wanted to build a completely new separate audience on TikTok, you could do with a bit of time and a bit of consistency. But obviously, why would you not take your existing audience and move them across?
Excellent. Lots of interest around TikTok from the audience and myself. Here's a question from Reza. Instagram feels like a platform where fans respect music, but TikTok doesn't. It feels more like a place to build a following by showing funny videos, but not so much actually playing music content. Do you have any thoughts on this? Do you feel like the quality of a TikTok follower is different, or the relationship to the music is different?
I think because TikTok is a newer platform, as a whole, it has a slightly younger demographic. And I think if you actually look at that demographic on Instagram now, for example, the way they consume content, but the way they post content is completely different. And it's not about having this really polished aesthetic. And I think that's why people sometimes think, oh, TikTok is just silly videos, because it's this style of
Lo-fi kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's actually more to do with the style of the content and what people want to see on that platform, as opposed to the quality of it, shall we say.
Got it. So that's, let's say, the lay of the land with TikTok right now. And one of the things I talk about with my manager, and I think a lot and talk about in the community, there's so many platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Discord, Reddit, YouTube, email. It can be overwhelming. Let's just start with, how should one go about deciding what platforms to invest their energy in? Let's start with that question and see where we go from there.
Okay, yeah. Definitely, I would recommend don't try and go for everything at once straight away, because you're like anything, you're going to spread yourself too thin. Ideally, you kind of want different types of content across different platforms, because otherwise, you want someone following you on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, having you saved on all the different DSPs. But then what are you offering them if you're just posting the same thing on each channel? And then eventually people are going to either hit the unfollow button, the unsubscribe button, that sort of thing. So ideally, start with a smaller number of platforms and try and differentiate the content that you have. But sorry, what were you going to say?
Finish your thought, and then I have a follow-on question.
Yeah, of course. So I suppose people, I think, have a natural tendency towards certain platforms as it is anyway. I'd be very surprised if anyone on the Zoom call doesn't already prefer either Instagram or TikTok. Everyone does have a preference. So lean into what you already know and what you already like, because that's where you're going to have better chances at success if you already use it and so start there and then look to expand.
Got it. So what you're saying completely resonates and makes sense with me, which is, focus on specific platforms, specialize on that platform for that type of content. But at the same time, I'm also formulating an argument in my head where, when you talk about the repetition, okay, I posted about my new EP on Instagram. Well, maybe I should post it on YouTube also and mention it on Twitter also. So how do I thread that needle between repetition and specializing between platforms? Because I guess I'm in my mind now, I'm thinking, how do I balance both plates at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. So in that respect, with something like a release, obviously you want it across all the platforms that you have.
So for big,
yeah, and if it was, say, it's release day, and you have a video clip, and that's the clip you've chosen. This is like my hero piece. and that's what I'm using to promote. If you put that out across all platforms, I'm not saying you can't do that, but every day, if you are posting the same thing, you post a picture on Instagram and then you post it on Twitter, for example, and the same caption, that's when people are going to get. But those key moments when you're like in campaign, that's absolutely fine, because that's, you want people to see it everywhere. If you have loads of different content, so say this hero video clip, you have 5 versions of that, amazing, that's great. But if you don't, that's also okay, because the main point is you're shouting about that release and you're telling the world about it across all platforms.
Makes complete sense. All right, we have a couple minutes left. Just want to open this up. Does anyone have any more questions for Megan? Just open up the floor here. Feel free to toss in the chat or unmute yourself, and you can go by voice. And let's just give it 10, 15 seconds. And I'll just scroll up here, see if there's any questions I missed.
Does that mean I've answered everything then?
You've answered it all. Let's see. Oh, actually, oh, hello.
Oh, yeah, got a quick one. Say we got like a couple of releases coming up. They're both like 4 or 5 track EPs. Like, how would you space them out, and how would you would you try to promote both of them a bunch, or would you try to, put all your muscle behind one of those? Like, what's the approach there usually?
Great question. Love that. Okay. So I think the key here, let's say it's four releases. You want that consistency between them. So in an ideal world, I would say you have your first release, you have maybe a 3 to 4 week promo time afterwards, and you use that momentum to build into your next release. Now, where that might change strategically is that if you have a favorite, or you know how it is when you have one track, and like, this is the one, this is the one I want to put my energy behind. Yep. So that's where your campaign is going to take a slightly different direction, because it's then how you use those other releases to bolster that one you want to put your energies behind. Again, this is a conversation I was having the other day, actually. How long is too long to wait? Do you want to release all your other tracks before you get to the big one? Does it need to come second? Does it need to come third? And I think in a situation like that, you can outline your plan and say, okay, I'm going to put this favorite track out as the 3rd release, because I want the first two are good and I really like them, but this one is the one where I'm really going to get people's attention. So I'm going to build momentum with these first 2 and use the audience that I've gathered from them to really put my energies into the 3rd one. But you're going to judge it as you go as well. This isn't like a fixed strategy, so to speak. You're going to say, okay, maybe the first one didn't do quite as well as I was expecting, so maybe I'll bring out the big guns now. Or it did better than expected, let's continue building momentum and let's release another track before the big one, so to speak. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Awesome. Any other questions before we wrap it up? All right. Well, I think we'll wind it down here. Megan, thanks so much for your time. Lots of great insight that you shared. I learned a lot. I'm sure I know everyone listening definitely was able to take away a lot from this. Megan Palmer, account director at Circulate. If you need any brand management, social media, or digital strategy, hit up Megan. Definitely lots of value over there. So thanks for your time. And I know it's late in Ireland right now, so don't want to hold you any longer.
No worries at all. Thank you so much for having me.